Profanity sucks. Vampires suck. Content might not be suitable for all listeners in this episode of Bewitched Banter. You have been warned. Welcome. You're listening to Bewitched Banter. My name is Amy, and Krista had a sex change. Say hi.
Hello.
Unfortunately, Krista is sick this week. Nothing too serious, just the common cold. She will be missed, so it won't be the same. I invited my historian in-house, who happens to be my hubby. Do you want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, I think that she was mostly looking for people that were very available and also close by.
Very true.
And she found me down the hall, and she said, you know what people need? More Bewitched Banter on the Tuesday before Thanksgiving, because we understand you're going to be in those weird household, dinner table conversations, and I hope that at least this will give you a little bit of entertainment as you're maybe driving out to your family's affair.
Yes. So I don't think you even said your name.
Hi, I'm Cory.
There you go. So yes, this is my husband, Cory, the king of dad jokes or bad jokes, I would say. I don't know which one you would like to say.
I will totally say absolutely to both, because
okay.
and maybe this is another warning. I know you did it for profanity, but I'm hoping that I'll be an okay
guest host.
Yeah, it's like I feel like I'm rude.
This might be a one and done. We wipe our hands clean. But yeah, hopefully Krista starts feeling better. She just isn't feeling the best. So we miss you, Krista. But we are today going to cover the history of vampires. And I'm a little nervous because my husband is like historian.
I think you're building it up a little bit much.
Well, you taught history, and I feel like sometimes I say things.
But in high school, it was like you're trying to make it sound like I have like a published thesis. No, not quite. No, I think that this is gonna be really fun, and Ames, show me the way.
Okay, I will. So we will. Cory's like, I don't even want to banter with you. Get to the story. I heard your banter all dinner. But first of all, let's cheers. We are drinking what?
Petite by Freak Show.
Freak Show. Appropriate for vampires.
We should have gotten the one from Transylvania, though. The Dracula wine.
They have that?
Yeah.
Why didn't you say anything?
I just wasn't thinking of it. Well, you kind of like basically picked me up off the street, and the street being our hallway, so,
The vampire has obviously a very interesting background. From what I found, there were some like roots from Egypt, but I'm mostly going to focus on Europe. And it seems like most of what is known from historians stems from the 16th century. Are you aware of this as a history teacher? Or ex-history teacher, I should say, because you do not teach anymore.
I mean, slightly. I think that this will probably carry over into the story that I tell. So I do know that it has a very old beginning. Are we supposed to say, like, you're kind of my podcast Sherpa here.
Okay.
Am I supposed to say that I believe in vampires or don't believe in vampires? What's the deal?
You don't have to say anything, but now you've brought it up. Do you believe in vampires?
No. So this is a double cynic special showdown.
I don't think Krista believes in vampires either.
I don't know.
Unless she's out there tonight sucking some blood, and that's why she doesn't feel so well.
She might, yes. Maybe, yeah. I think that one of the interesting things to me, and we were talking about this before, actually. I know I totally derailed your vampire history, but this is something I want to put out to listeners, just in general, especially those of you that are religious in any way. I thought about this the other day. One of the curses of being a vampire is you live forever, right? And you watch people die, and that's kind of like if you read...
You'd be like, not another one again?
Yeah.
Damn it, I gotta get a new friend. Should I join Meetup?
Yeah, exactly. And rinse, repeat, you do that for centuries. And then I thought about like people that are really waiting for that hereafter. And I'm like, that sounds like a long time. Forever? Eternity?
You said this the other night, and I thought that was kind of a depressive thought, because I think it'd be kind of cool. Like, you would see the world change, and yes, maybe you get bored, but maybe you could live several lives. And if you had all that knowledge, don't you think with all that knowledge, you could do something really cool with yourself?
Probably, but I
don't want to work for 1,000 years. I wouldn't mind living for 1,000 years, but working, hell no. Like I'd want to be retired at 60, but where do I get that money to
I don't know.
Capitalize to live that life.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what your retirement, your pension program looks like if you're a vampire and you retire at 60 years old.
These are all good questions.
Yeah, exactly. But I do think that's part of the lore of a vampire is the idea that they stalk, forever around just without friends because they've all passed, and it's just kind of a depressing kind of folk story.
Yeah, like a lonely existence.
Yeah,
Existence.
Lonely existence. It's kind of a very I feel like that's kind of maybe the impetus of it intersecting with goth culture. This idea that you need to be in dark places, you come out at night, only death makes me feel good. Like those types of thoughts definitely comes down from this whole vampiric type of mindset. But Ames, I'm pretty sure I totally just AWOL'd your turned your story. So go ahead, love.
I don't care. The perception of what a vampire is has drastically changed throughout time in several regions. Each region had their own idea of what a vampire is. But the most common trait we all know, no shit, is that they are believed to drink a person's blood. It was commonly believed that vampires would hunt at night. We know that. We know that people believe they could morph into a bat or wolf. They don't cast shadows. And they can't see themselves in a mirror, which I'm all going to explain in a little bit. Do you know why people think this historically?
No, but I think that you're going to tell me.
Okay.
Historically.
Shut up. Okay. I know. I was like, I gotta find the husband on to be an ass to me. Okay, on air. I was thinking, fuck, if you're dead, do you really want to see yourself? Because I think that'd be a favor not having to see myself in the mirror if I've lived for 1,000 years, because I would be ragged.
Well, they don't really age, though. That's like the whole thing, is they stay the same age.
I know, but I don't age, but there's certain days I don't want to see myself in the mirror. Aren't there certain days you're like, I would rather just not look at myself?
Well, I guess you should go to Transylvania and get a little... I guess that would be like the ultimate Botox, right? Instead of them injecting things, that they'd be sucking your blood, all those Eastern European... I guess there's a lot of supposed vampires in New Orleans as well. But history lesson, please, go ahead.
Okay. So it all stemmed from people not understanding what happened to people after they died, and a fear started to take over people that the dead, even if they were buried, could come back and hurt them. Part of the reason people were so fearful of the dead and started to assume that some dead people may be vampires is because they didn't know how bodies decomposed. So this is disgusting. As a corpse starts to decompose, the dead person's skin starts to shrink, and it gives the illusion that their teeth and fingernails have grown longer.
That makes sense.
Yes. And also, as the organs start to decompose, a dark fluid can leak out of one's nose and mouth.
The bile?
Yeah, and it's probably like all the gases that...
Ugh.
And for this whole reason, it made the Europeans believe that the dead were haunting the living and drinking their blood.
Well, that's my logical conclusion. That makes total sense. I mean, I've also heard tales, and maybe you'll get this in a future episode, about the whole idea of zombies, but there were people that were buried alive.
Oh, no,
but more often than not, and they had to install bells on, tied to the finger.
I was about to say that tidbit, but I think I only knew that tidbit because of you. They assumed, like, witches would curse communities with sickness, right? And so they believed that certain diseases would also be spread because of vampires, too. It seems like a very society where they were like just ready to point their finger at like anyone. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I think one of the things that's really interesting about just old medicine and old doctors and whatnot is the idea that they really did believe that bad air or demons would cause sickness, because the era that we live in right now, where we really think about germs, bacteria, viruses, I mean, that's really relatively recently. That's like the late 1800s, early 1900s, where like Louis Pasteur and other individuals are looking at germ theory. So it makes sense, And it also makes sense about kind of all this superstition because you're always trying to put together something that you don't quite understand. So you're going to try to create some kind of mythology that'll explain this all away. It can't be these little microscopic things that are causing you to be sick. It's got to be a guy with fangs, right?
Well,
that makes sense to me.
I don't almost fault them though. Like if you had no explanation of all of a sudden weird things were happening and there was no scientific reason or education to explain things to you, it's like you would jump to these weird conclusions, don't you think?
Yeah, that was literally what I just said.
Okay, fuck you. So, that is our husband, me and my husband, on a nutshell.
On a nutshell?
On a nutshell and in a nutshell.
Okay.
2 peas in a pod. Okay.
I like how you made that point and you're like, let me woman-splain it back to you. And I'm like, yeah, that is literally what I said.
Yeah, yesterday we were walking around the block and some woman overheard me and Cory, and I think she was laughing her ass off because I asked him why he kept mansplaining stuff to me.
It's not mansplaining if you don't hear it the first time.
I heard you.
You did not. Most of the time you're like, huh? And then I had to explain it slowly because I don't know if she doesn't understand it or she can't hear it. It's different. It's not mansplaining. It's literally, I think my wife might be deaf.
It's like Bewitched Banter all of a sudden becomes America's least favorite couple telling a story. Because of this, historians have found that people were most scared of vampires, which makes sense when plagues were taking place, right? That's when like the vampire scare really took over.
But it's interesting you said earlier that they're putting this around the 16th century. Because
it wasn't just the 16th to early, close to the 19th century.
I know, but I was going to say the Black Death is, the end of its mid 14th century. So it's interesting that I think my story will maybe change the lineage potentially of what you're saying.
Well, I was saying you could question me and tell me if I don't have my facts right, and that's okay.
No, I think that you do. I think that it's pretty common, especially in Eastern Europe, tales of vampires and werewolves and all those types of mythical beasts. And I think it does equate to what you're saying, that they just didn't understand why these diseases were happening. You see that with witches and things like that. And I keep coming back, even well before that, the idea of a witch doctor. How pissed do you think people got when he's like, okay, guys, hold on, I'm going to do a little spell, and we're going to have our crops this year. And then nothing happened. And they're like, the gods must hate our witch doctor. We got to kill his ass.
So they did that back in the day?
Oh, 1,000,000%. Like, can you imagine, like, you were the guy that would try to change the, if there's a drought, they really thought that you could kind of change the weather because you prayed to a god or did a sacrifice.
So witch doctors used to get killed for not curing things.
I'm not going on record now that I'm on record.
Well, we've been talking about witch doctors, so it's an interesting tidbit I didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, when you're essentially trying to deliver something for your village, or you could do what a lot of cult leaders have done and say, you know what, maybe we weren't, we screwed up the process, or, we didn't sacrifice the right amount of animals or people or whatever it was. There was definitely that. Or there could be, you're the false prophet or whatever god.
So they would kill them though sometimes.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised. The Middle Ages seem brutal.
I'm going before the Middle Ages, girl.
Okay, where are you going, girl?
I'm talking the Aztecs. I'm talking the Mayans. I know we totally deviated from vampires, so
that's what we do. So
that's what we do in Bewitched Banter. We banter away from the subject.
Yes. If you were ugly, fugly, whatever you call it, it might not be uncommon for someone to look at you and think, A, you're fugly. B, what's wrong with you? C, you're a vampire.
That makes sense because there's a lot of inbreeding in the past.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of fugly people around to begin with.
Well, yeah. I mean, side note, just being a history geek, is if people out there want to see something really interesting, you should check out what Queen Elizabeth I really looked like. Because honestly, people had huge pockmarks and things in case they got the plague or, talk about acne and things like that. They're not washing their faces regularly.
People are fugly. So let me get back to that. So people are fugly. People are looking at them like, oh my God.
And this is well pre-braces. So people got the snaggle tooth.
Oh, 100%. Part of an argument is that people think that vampires, like the whole character stemmed from people finding the corpse with like blood coming out of their mouth and their nose, their teeth being exposed more in the nails. But another argument is that it came from a blood disorder called porphyria, which I hope I'm saying right. I didn't bother to look up how to pronounce it, which I'm guilty of all the time. But it is a disease. I think it still is around today. Probably not so common, thankfully. But it's been around for over 1,000 years. And during the Middle Ages, a lot of nobility and royal members that lived in Eastern Europe actually had it.
What are the symptoms?
Well, I'm going to get into it. So
I want to know now.
I want to know now.
It's my information and I want it now.
The disease causes people to produce less heme, I guess, which is an important component of hemoglobin, which is the protein that red blood cells that they need it to carry oxygen to your lungs and any other organs you have. Some of the symptoms from porphyria are the following, and they're very similar to vampires. You will pick that up immediately. With this disease, people became so sensitive to sunlight that they, when they were exposed to it, they would get blisters on their face. Their skin would blacken, and they would get, like, weird hair growth.
That's so strange that it's one component of your red blood cells and it causes hair growth.
Not just even that. It causes so many weird things. It causes people to have what looks like fangs because the disease would actually eat away at their gums.
Oh, okay.
And expose their teeth, making it appear like, like a vampire. They had, like, extremely long teeth. When they would go for a piss, when they're at the pub... I don't really know if they went to the pub back then. But
yeah, they did because water was unsafe to drink.
Their piss looked like bright red. I'm sure people saw it. They were like, what the fuck, mate? Are you drinking blood? Doctors at the time were actually telling people to literally drink blood who had this disease. Not human blood, but animal blood.
Well, I mean, yeah, it totally makes sense because this is back in a time where bloodletting, even if you just had like the flu, for instance, people would, your doctor... Mm-hmm. Or at this time, actually, your barber would have been administrating your dental wear or your dental pieces and your medicine. They would have attached, they really thought that if you got bad blood out of you, you'd be okay. So it makes sense that, yeah, you would be drinking it too.
I mean,
why not?
Not much surprises me. Oh, also, garlic, had severe, symptoms for people because there's sulfur content in garlic, and it causes porphyria to actually flare up more, and it caused people a lot of pain. So, this disease wasn't just, physical, ailments. It, literally caused them a lot of pain, too. Garlic, if they would eat it and digest it, it actually caused the disease to flare up and be 10 times worse. Oh, and another thing to answer your question about the mirror. So because people's faces were so disfigured, remember you have weird tufts of hair growing out of your nostrils, ear holes, big looking fangs, blisters on your face. A lot of patients would avoid mirrors, obviously, because who wants to look at themselves? What are you laughing at?
I wish that dating apps were around then. We could see this shit.
Should I swipe right or should I swipe left on this vampire?
Yeah, it's like people that, let's say there's a community that has STIs together and they're like, okay, we are going to date one another. It'd be an entire group of people with vampiric...
Oh, it'd be like vampiresonly.com.
Yeah, vampiresonly.com, and they would be swiping.
I'm trying to think of a fun pun for a vampire dating site. Can you think of anything?
Suck and fuck?
Vampiresbethirsty.com. That is a good one.
That's a good one.
I like it. Okay. During the Spanish Inquisition, did you know over 600 vampires were burned at the stake? Did you know that?
I didn't, but Takamado is crazy.
What's Takamado?
Takamado?
Sounds like Takamata?
He was the chief inquisitor.
Oh, no.
In Spain.
A lot of the people who were burned at the stake were actually victims of porphyria.
Well, you know what I love about the ancient periods?
What?
You know, I know you covered this on a past episode, but the idea that in America, for instance, that we would crush people to death to find out if they're witches, and then if they die, they were like, well, I guess they weren't a witch now. So that's probably the same thing with Takamata. I guess they weren't vampires, guys. We figured it out. Oh, they're dead? Oh, too bad. Mm-hmm. I guess we cured them.
Oh, yeah. And it's like if you had, heaven forbid, some like weird physical ailment, like you were shunned first from society, so no chance of making a living. And then third is like, hopefully you weren't like accused of being a witch or a vampire, I guess. I didn't know.
At the very best situation, maybe you were like a person, royalty loved the old freak show situation. Mm-hmm. Like if you were someone who was a little person or whatnot, you would tend to be part of like the court as like a jester type of role. I mean, we talk about being mean to people with physical, I wouldn't say impairments, but like physical defects. I'll use that terminology. Being mean to those people now, but I just imagine that things have been very difficult. And also, we always talk about this, Ames, but how bad it would have smelled.
Oh, yeah. Stinky people be rank.
Yeah, you don't bathe. Women would use beeswax for makeup. You know, disgusting. It's interesting, too, you're talking about, like, people's gums getting kind of eaten. It's like, this is... I think the Egyptians created the toothbrushes we kind of know about it. But
oh, they did? I didn't know that. That's so cool.
Pretty sure that unless I'm speaking out of turn.
What would they use? Like
dry
branches?
No, it was some kind of animal's fur that was really tough. Yeah, they make the bristles out of some kind of animal's hair that was really coarse, and then they would use it.
That's awesome.
But they didn't have toothpaste until like I think the 1800s is when the first toothpaste was like an actual like people use baking soda and stuff like that.
Oh, that was like my ex-boyfriend. Remember I told you before I met you, my boyfriend before Cory came to save the day. He made his own toothpaste and it was baking soda, and everyone spent the night.
His name was Arm & Hammer, right?
Oh my god, that was a dad joke or a bad joke. Which one? Crowd, let us know. Back to vampires. So people also believe people who had this disease. It wasn't obviously I told you. It's physical distress, but also like it caused them to lose their mind a little bit. But I can imagine if like your appearance was changing so much, how could it not affect you mentally anyway? But I think they sometimes might have had hallucinations. They're not completely sure on that one. And now we're going to fast forward to another time. So there is one real living vampire that people believe was the inspiration for Bram Stoker, who created the character Count Dracula in the Dracula novel. Yeah,
and I wish I was there that night. Mary Shelley.
I don't know Bram who that Stoker. Is.
She wrote Frankenstein.
Oh, okay, cool.
And then the author of Nosferatu, they were all in the same castle telling ghost stories at the same night, and it became those three different stories.
Damn, that's cool.
Yeah, can you imagine being part of that late night storytelling?
Stoker never claimed that this was the inspiration for his character, and there's a lot of like argument about... Most people like who really study in depth really don't see the similarities, but some people still argue it is. And it's Vlad Dracul ruled Wakaya, am I saying that right? Romania, off from 1456 to 1462.
Did you just try to say Wakanda? Wakanda forever, like Black Panther?
Shut up. Okay, let me keep going. So he was the nickname Vlad the Impaler, and he was basically serial killer, in my opinion. Who just loved war. He liked to kill people in the most brutal ways. He liked to kill people mostly from impaling them with a wooden stake.
Oh, I love this. Yeah, it was the Turks, right?
Right? I don't know.
It was. And he's a national hero for the people of Romania.
Okay. Is he?
He was, yeah.
Supposedly, Vlad would love to dine amongst his dying victims. Is this true, Cory? And dip his bread in their blood.
No, that's not
true.
I love it. No, so it is interesting about Vlad. So he was actually undermanned pretty much. Like he would have that area, which is actually Transylvania in Romania, would have been taken over by the Turks. But the reason why he's called Vlad the Impaler is, yes, he did impale them anus through mouth with a giant pike.
Oh my, no.
Yeah, and he let the bodies in like gravity like make them go through it. But
he personally did, or he had his whole troop do it?
His troops did it, yeah. But the
he
thing
trained them to do that?
Yeah.
That's so messed up.
Well, you and I have talked so many times about how we're putting a current day eye on what the past was. Like that would have been, yes, brutal, but not ridiculous at the time. And what he did is, because he had less troops, he made a showing of the first kind of group of Turks to try to invade his kingdom. Mm-hmm. So when the second crew came in and they saw all these people on pikes, he's like, nope, not today, Satan, and turned back around. So it was really about like showing the other side that you mean business by a bunch of people that got ass to mouthed with a pike.
Whoa.
I mean, would you invade that village if you saw a bunch of dead bodies on sticks?
I mean, would I invade any village? No.
Well, yeah, but I'm saying especially if you saw a bunch of dead bodies on the side of the road going into that town. Probably wouldn't. So he was a smart man.
Yeah, and I didn't really believe the whole fairy tale of him dipping his bread in blood, but I think it's probably like a rumor he started to make himself sound like he was like a really strong individual, don't you think?
Either that, or I think it stems from the Turks trying to. Yeah, I mean, think about this. This is well before photography. It's well before videography. It's well before recorded whatever. Like, all you're getting is kind of word of mouth, and then maybe they would have written down. So you're getting the game of telephone. So I don't think that actually happened, but maybe it did. Maybe Vlad was into that blood
I
play.
mean, people were drinking blood regardless in the Middle Ages, so it doesn't seem that crazy to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We know people are going to do anything to protect themselves from like witches and vampires, right? And so an archaeologist actually discovered a skull that was buried. It wasn't until 2006 they discovered it was from the 16th century, and the skull actually had a brick placed inside their mouth, and they thought this was like a superstition back in the day. They thought if they placed the brick inside the vampire's mouth, it would help them not be able to eat the dead from the grave.
So what you're saying is when they buried a body, they put a brick in its mouth?
Not everyone, but...
Not everyone? Who got the treatment?
I mean,
Or was this like a standard protocol, like, okay, guys, we're putting old Ted under the ground. You ready for the brick part of it? Yep.
I guess so.
Okay.
But every country had its own superstitions. So back to your homeland, Germany.
My homeland, the Deutschland.
Deutschland. They actually had a belief that... So a lot of countries believe that vampires were like actually leaving the grave and walking around sucking blood. They thought vampires were doing all their activity from the grave, never leaving.
Ooh. Twist.
Yes.
M. Night Shyamalan twist. Continue.
In the late 1600s, lots of places, they would bury the dead wrapped in a cloth. It was called a burial shroud. And they believed that the dead were actually gnawing, like, imagine like you're gnawing on like what's hard to eat? Like a carrot? Or
a carrot's what you came up with?
I couldn't think of anything. What would you gnaw on?
Like dogs gnaw on bones because they're hard.
Okay, that's a better example.
You gnaw on carrots, right?
Yeah, you don't really gnaw on carrots.
Like you're a rabbit. Like Bugs Bunny.
But they actually believed they were like gnawing and eating at their burial cloth. And now we know it's because the fluids that were like coming from their body, which I talked about earlier, they were actually like the acid, I think, from the body was like able to tear the fabric, and it almost gave the illusion of someone like eating, like taking bites of it, if that makes sense.
That makes sense, yes.
Does it?
No, it does. And it's interesting, too, like, you talk about just their lack of anatomy and understanding what happens when people die. Yeah, it makes total sense. All this just superstition.
In 1679, a Protestant theologian...
Crushed it.
It took me 3 times to say that, guys. Wrote a publication called On the Chewing Dead.
On the Chewing Dead?
Well, that's what it translated as.
I would buy that book. If I saw, like,
well,
a book on
if it was a movie, you would have already watched it because you love shitty movies.
Yeah, can't help it.
But basically,
guilty!
But he basically told people in this... He told them to basically, in this journal, story, whatever you want to call it, to put soil, stones, and a coin for good luck in their mouth to cut the vampire, like, ever coming back to haunt them. And they actually believed that the vampire, for this reason, would starve, and then the corpse would die again, I guess. Like, they died twice.
2 for 1 special.
Yeah.
Love it.
Yeah, definitely.
German efficiency.
Benedict the 14th actually came forward in the middle of the 18th century and was basically like, hey guys, this is all BS. This is a fantasy. Let's all calm down.
Ooh, he's a real Renaissance man. Pope Benedict the 14th.
And he was basically telling people, like, let's just all calm down. Let's stop doing the anti-vampire activities. But no one listened. People were still so scared that they were like, no matter what, I'm going to still keep doing these crazy batshit things off the wall, which I don't blame them for because they didn't know any better. You know what, Pope Benedict the 14th, you got a little castle to protect you. What about me? I don't have a moat. I don't know if you had a moat, but regardless.
You've been to the Vatican City, haven't you?
No, never.
There's no moat, I don't think. It's in the
regardless.
Okay.
I don't have a moat. Just gonna point that out.
I ain't got no moat.
I was actually surprised to find this out, that the anti-vampire movement actually took place almost 2 centuries after the last Salem witch trials in New England in the 19th century. You know about this?
So they were not pro-vampire. They didn't like the vampires.
So in 1892, a 19-year-old named Mercy Brown died of TB, tuberculosis.
Is that what it stands for?
Hashtag TB, tuberculosis.
Bring it back, bring it back. Just kidding. Do not bring back tuberculosis.
Everyone in her family, apart from her brother, was already dead from the disease. So her brother, Edwin, the time when she passed away, right? He's dead.
Edwin's dead.
Yeah,
Bye, Felicia.
And so Edwin's neighbors, the little nosy little Karens, came over and was like, hey, we're worried about Edwin. And they were like, what's going on? We think Mercy, who just died.
Well, I thought Mercy was alive.
No, she died of TB.
She died of TB.
Edwin's still alive.
Okay, got it twisted. Continue.
It might have been my storytelling there.
So Team Edwin.
Alive. Yes, Team Edwin.
Dead.
Yes.
Continue.
Her mom
Edwin's dead.
And sister also dead. But the neighbors...
But Edwin's alive.
The neighbors think that Mercy, her mom, and sister, Team Dead... are after to get Edwin.
So wait. Let me unpack a little bit, okay?
They think that they're coming from the grave to hurt Edwin, the brother, Mercy, who just died from TB.
Were they not concerned about how, ironic her name was, Mercy?
For this reason, Team Edwin.
I like how we were going full Twilight on this story.
Yeah, so Team Edwin's team, literally went up to the grave and was like, what's up with Mercy down there? Let's look.
Yeah, what's the deal with Mercy?
And they opened her casket, and she had blood in her mouth, and it was seeping from her heart, too. Then the neighbors decided it'd be best to burn her heart for this reason. They were like, okay, the only reason we're going to protect ourselves is burn her heart. And then they decided to mix the ashes of her heart, almost like a potion, and feed it to King Edwin.
He was a king?
No, it's not like King, he's Team Edwin.
Was Edward in Twilight a king as well?
No.
Okay, continue. I'm just trying to clarify for our listeners.
And this is not the first time this happened, so don't think this is some outrageous thing. This was actually a common thing people did back in the day to protect themselves from vampires.
It's like rosé, modern day. Mm-hmm. They're like, give me a nice glass of heart juice and what else am I feeling? So it's like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
So they believed when a person would drink the ashes of the heart of a vampire, that could heal and protect a person.
It would have been funnier if they were doing lines of heart, like
Cory. He passed away a few months later, so he probably had...
Edwin, you were so close.
It has been documented that this is not a single incident. This has been happened over 60 times that we know of. They call it anti-vampire ritual during the 18th and 19th century. So these rituals were most popular in Krista's region, Connecticut and Rhode Island. So in her little pocket of the woods.
Okay, so I want to start with just a kind of a question for you, actually, Amy. So, in my research that I did right before this, because, again, according to our narrative, you just found me on the sides of our hallway. My question is for you, love. Could you tell myself and your listeners, what do you what is the myth of QAnon and its followers? What is kind of the overall belief?
QAnon?
Yeah. How could you synthesize that down for us? What do they believe? These people that believe in QAnon?
I honestly don't know. To be honest, I wish I knew more about them.
Well, I am going to kind of the basis of the story, and the reason why it's part of your vampire episode is I just really want people to know. And this is not original reporting, so I do want to give props to the Vice News team who have published.
Oh my God, they don't believe in vampires, do they?
I'm gonna get to it, Abe. The Vice News team who published a video series called "The Most Dangerous Conspiracy Theory on Earth," which is about this, and actually they talk about the historical kind of correlations to a lot of current day conspiracy theories. Such as I'm going to focus on QAnon, but they also talk about the lizard people and things like that. So do yourself a favor, check that out. These videos are very interesting, and they give you a lot of good evidence that showcases how basically we've begged and borrowed and stolen. Wow, can't speak with proper English. Past belief structures and kind of superimposed it into this current day web-based conspiracy theory belief. So let me unpack a little bit of QAnon, and then I want to take it back into the Middle Ages, actually, and potentially even before the Middle Ages. We're really talking about post-death of Christ here, time period to start this out. And that essentially is like 2,000 years nearly of this idea of what's called Blood Libel, which I'm going to talk about in just a second. But key piece, just to bring us all up to speed on QAnon beliefs. QAnon believers believe that there's an individual named Q that has a high-ranking...
Can you imagine, like, they basically create their own religion. They're trying to say, like, there's a modern God today.
Yeah, I mean, Q is supposed to be this person that's high up in the Pentagon that knows a lot of, top secret state secrets, and this individual is using 8chan and other types of platforms to describe events, and truth be told, just like any person that's trying to predict the end of the world and it's wrong. Just like we saw the Mayan calendar, 2012 happened and nothing occurred. We're seeing these
doomsday people.
Yes.
They never can say "I told you so."
Well, isn't that the beauty of it though? Is like even if they were right, which they never are, you can't really say "I told you so." They think that Q is a high-ranking official in the U.S. government that's privy to a lot of state secrets, and that liberals and Hollywood elites are drinking the blood and of children partaking in child sex trafficking and taking adrenochrome, which is according to Hunter S. Thompson and Fear and Loathing in Las Vegas, comes from a live adrenal gland. So they believe that these Hollywood elites and politicians and liberals, which I hate to tell you guys out there, Amy and myself do tend to skew that way, are literally perceived as drinking the blood and the adrenochrome of these children to have these mystical powers. We've seen throughout the past couple years, people. There was an individual on the Hoover Dam that shut down traffic because he thought that he was there to save children from.
This is a QAnon person?
Yes. We saw a QAnon aficionado go into a pizza parlor during. You can find out information thinking that it was part of a underground sex trafficking ring that fed children to Democrat officials and liberals. Like they tend to go after people like Oprah and Hillary Clinton. But time and time again, we're seeing people becoming more and more violent and off base. And just recently we saw people waiting. They're still waiting, according to newscasters now. They thought that 11/2 would happen and JFK Jr. would reappear magically in Dallas, Texas. Didn't happen. Some people are still there waiting for him to reappear. Early Christianity on this idea known as Blood Libel. So let me get into that, and the reason why it's part of your vampire episode is really the fact that there was a ancient belief that the Jews, and this is stemming from, if you haven't paid attention to the way that, let's say, Mel Gibson portrays Jewish people, or
I haven't.
Okay, I'm gonna unpack it then. So you really wondered, like, why do people hate the Jews so much?
Mel Gibson hates Jewish people?
Yes.
I didn't know all this. Okay.
He does. I mean, there's a video where he got a DUI and he was cussing out the Jews.
I remember he got a DUI, but I didn't know he was cussing out the Jewish people.
Yes, and the way he made the not Lost Temptation of Christ, but the
I didn't want to watch that movie. I heard it's really graphic.
It is, but the way he made his film about the
Christian people love that movie.
Crucifixion. Some people do, but what I'm getting at, it's bigger than just what's criticized Mel Gibson, which he has a lot of faults. But the thing is, a lot of Christians, especially early Christians, and this continues into much of European and American history, is they found that the Jews were liable for the crucifixion of Christ. They thought that, like, Judas was a Jewish individual that was part of the 12 disciples, right? And I want to remind people that Jesus was a rabbi, did not start his own religion. He just kind of talked slightly different than traditional Pharisees and religious leaders at the time. Ultimately makes his own religion because the followers of Christianity followed the teachings of Jesus. He is ultimately crucified by followers of Judaism. So there's this thought that the Jews as a group were responsible for the execution of Jesus Christ. That is a bold step, especially since he wasn't the only person during that time that's speaking, in town squares, trying to create. That was kind of like almost this is before the time of television, before the time of the internet. That's what people went to go see for entertainment. They would go see a speaker, and he was just one of the speakers traveling around with his disciples. He wouldn't have been that dissimilar, except what he's saying potentially would have been controversial for people in power at the time. Sorry, deviating slightly. But historically, there's been this thought that the Jews are responsible for the death of Christ, and because of that, early Christians, and you see this all the way through, to the treatment of the Jews during Hitler's time, this thought of we need to punish them for this sin that they've created. And one of the early ways that Christians created this myth that the Jews were evil is this idea of blood libel. The Jews would take children, drink their blood to sustain power and life. Which, what I'm getting at is that is the quintessential ideal of QAnon today.
They take that?
It's based on this pre-Middle Ages view that the Jews would, drink the blood of children.
Yeah.
And I've even seen in my research that I had to hastily provide for this podcast that there was this belief with early Christians that, for matzah, like soup or matzah balls, that they're using Jewish blood in the recipe. Children's blood in the recipe. So,
oh my God. I just don't get how much stupidity can be around.
Yeah, I mean, obviously these individuals are not doing this. And you kind of see this ideal deviate slightly in the 80s during this whole like satanic craze where everyone's like worshiping the devil according to the media, doing blood sacrifice and this idea of blood libel, the idea that if you drink the blood of children, you'll become stronger. I know that you're a Harry Potter fan. Unicorn blood, right? For Voldemort.
Was it unicorn blood?
It was unicorn blood.
I don't remember that.
So that we are living through a time period.
Of vampires.
Essentially, that's what they're saying, that liberal elites, and there definitely are still hints of that anti-Semitism in the QAnon doctrine. If you think about who they equate as being part of this liberal elite, a lot of those individuals happen to be Jewish. We see with fine scholars known as Marjorie Taylor Greene about the Jewish space lasers. These same anti-Semitic tropes still pervade today. They're very pervasive in certain parts of conservative subculture. But I really wanted to bring to life kind of this bridging of two very different time periods with early Christians, very, very key in going into the Middle Ages treatment of the Jews. By you kind of see this in the Renaissance with like the Merchant of Venice. They didn't talk about blood libel, in that situation, but you still see this historic mistreatment of people of the Jewish faith or lineage throughout this time. And what I'm getting at is there's a through line all the way up to modern day. They just changed the medium and who they say they're going after. And the same belief is people that they don't understand and they don't agree with are sucking the blood of children, and they have no proof that this exists. But yet it is highly pervasive. You have the potential Q individual running for Congress. I don't
think Q is one person, though. Do you?
There's one individual that they kind of point to, at least
I have a feeling
being.
I feel like it's a group of people. I can't believe one person could do that.
I do believe just the way that it's set up, that it is one individual, but I do think that it is a multitude of individuals who've created these careers off of being QAnon influencers. And it's those individuals who are taking essentially bullshit and trying to interpret it and creating basically weaponized bullshit. The other people will, because it's pattern recognition. It's like, this worked this one time. What I was trying to present to you all as listeners is an allegory, a direct line to past beliefs of vampirism, or whatever you want to say. People that are sucking the blood, people that are
sucking the life out of you.
Yeah, social deviants, according to Western Christians. And I'm saying there's a direct allegory to current day. Yeah, and I think that the big thing overall is, like I said, people they're distrustful and cautious about people or things that they don't understand. And so they're going to assign, some type of blame or superstition, like you talk about vampires rising from the dead because they didn't understand death, or in my case, this idea of our children, or the reason why this whole group of people are quote unquote doing well in the minds of some downtrodden person in Europe or now in the States is because they're obviously killing children. That's can't be further from the truth, but it's just because they don't understand these individuals, period, any of the belief systems. So it's easy then to just prescribe one belief. And I think that a lot of people need to, this is really keen, is since it's on the internet does not mean it's true. You really need to check the backgrounds of the authors that you read. No, I think if we can just tie a bow on this, I think that people are going to believe a certain way when they aren't exposed to the groups that they're afraid of. And what I'm getting at is all those isms, whether it be sexism, homophobia, racism. I'm a big believer that we could get rid of those if people were just exposed and interacted with people that are different. Mm-hmm. And I think that as we're going to Thanksgiving and the holidays, I'm just urging you listeners to, keep an open mind, interact with people and engage with people on a deeper level.
And don't suck anyone's blood. Should we wrap it up, hun?
Yeah.
What I will say is happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for listening if you stuck through with me and my hubby. And peace, bewitches!
Gobble, gobble, motherfucker!
Thanks for listening. Please rate and follow us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, and anywhere you listen to your podcasts. Check us out on Instagram or bewitchedbanter.com. Suggestions for the show? Email us at bewitchedbanter@gmail.com. Credits, music, Phantom Fun by Jonathan Boyle from premiumbeat.com. Podcast edited and produced by Krista Hins and Amy Holt.